Nature is said to be our greatest asset. But this police burn-off is a reminder that even Mother Nature is not above the law. This aromatic and highly intoxicating substance may be natural and enjoyable, but it is in fact highly illegal. It's considered by some to be an example of something that's eating away at the very fabric of our society. Something called crime.
Marijuana, cannabis, dope, call it what you like. It's a multi-million-dollar business in this country. And the growing and supply of it is almost exclusively controlled by organised crime.
The search for organised criminals turned up these old dears from Nelson Creek, who found themselves at the centre of a dramatic drug bust brouhaha. Acting on misinformation, police raided the home of Peaches and Stan, looking for drugs, among the crocheted cushions and elderly undies.
Very, very embarrassing, you know, to think that 65-year-old and you've got to have somebody go through your knicker drawer. It's not very nice. Did the same through my bra drawer. Well, you don't do that to an elderly lady, do you? And he stirred that around and sniffed it. And he said, "What is it?" I said, "It's dill." He said, "How do you spell it?" I personally have never, ever had one puff of marijuana, and I'm never likely to. I don't like it.
But it wasn't just the oldies under suspicion. It seemed that even former All Blacks were at it too.
Graham Murray, All Black captain, farmer, famous New Zealander and drug dealer.
But the truth was more prosaic. Murray found some dak growing on his land and informed the police, who removed the plants. But locals were convinced that where there's a sticky smoke, there must be a guilty fire.
Are you a drug dealer?
Absolutely not.
Have you ever been caught for doing drugs?
No, I can't be caught for it because I never have. And the reason I never have, I've never smoked pot or done anything, but I've never drunk spirits. Well, the reason I've never drunk spirits is that I gather, I might be wrong, but that the restraint on spirit drinking is a financial one. I don't have that restraint. And I drink too much wine now and suffer every day as a result, but I do enjoy it.
Well, these plants may not look much, but they could be worth as much as $1,000 each.
Coromandel, Northland, the East Coast, Nelson and the West Coast, the heartland of a booming New Zealand marijuana industry.
The rise of cannabis consumerism also brought with it the tinny house. And the Taj Mahal of tinny houses was this one in South Auckland, said to be one of the most efficient in the OECD, with an annual turnover larger than the GDP of Tokelau.
Behind this 2-metre-high brick fence and heavy metal gates is what police say was a sophisticated and blatant drug supermarket, open for business 24 hours a day for the past 3 years.
In the corner, you can see another lookout who has a string which runs from his lookout post to the dealing room.
Today, we encourage this kind of entrepreneurial enterprise. But back in the 90s, it was still highly illegal. And the brains behind the operation were rewarded not with an OBE, but with incarceration.
Have you ever been to a tinny house?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to the ones out in Otara. They're really good, and the service was actually really efficient. Because what you want in a good tinny house is you want to roll up, you go, skip to the door, trot, 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 dun, 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 without stopping. You don't want to break the stride. One house I went to in Grey Lynn. Yeah, it was dodgy as you know. You had to stop and wait a while. And you thought, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable, yeah. Yeah. But no, the ones in Otara, oh, those are smooth operations. They're really good. They should be very proud of themselves.
There are many who say that we could solve our crime problem in one fell swoop if we just took this out of the equation.
Alcohol is a drug which usually makes people relaxed and happy, but it doesn't take much before behaviour is affected.
Of all our national love affairs, our long-standing romance with liquor has been the most passionate and the most destructive.
If you can forgive me for saying this, I believe that we are a liquor-sodden society.
The problem is, we're a liquor-sodden society that likes to drive.
One of the myths associated with alcohol is that it makes you a better driver.
Yeah, I'm over the limit. But I reckon I'll drive it home tonight all right. Look at motor accidents, and most people who drive don't get killed. So I'll take the risk.
New Zealanders drink and drive perhaps more than any other nationality. And as a result, we've produced some of the world's finest drunk drivers. In 1981, the Ministry of Transport commissioned a drink driving test to see just how good our drunk drivers were.
We asked some of these young people to join an experiment, some tests which would prove how dangerous alcohol can be. Naturally, they were really keen.
Now, this is a diagram of some driving tests we're going to do. Firstly, when you're sober, and then we're going to pop you around here, and then we're going to do some more driving and test you again. We'll be then judging your impairment.
Using taxpayers' money, the study group enjoyed a massive free piss-up.
And then Min's got on fire.
But do the drivers know how much alcohol they've consumed?
About 5 or 6 nips and a few beers, you know.
When the levels were sufficient, the drivers began the intoxicated phase of the experiment.
Wish me luck!
In the end, luck had nothing to do with it. You were convicted for drink driving, weren't you, Sam?
Yeah, I'd been up Ponsonby Road here. I was actually the car I had at the time. I had that for many years, that car, an old 64 Chevy Impala. You know, I was up at the lights, and I don't know how specific I should be here, but I had a girlfriend with me at the time, and we were at the lights, and she was giving me a blowjob. And I was quite happy at the lights. I wasn't really worried too much. When I got a tap on the shoulder, I thought, God, she's got nice long arms. Fuck, you know, she reached around there. It wasn't her, it was a traffic cop. It was dark, you know. And he said, Mr. Hunt, he said, do you realise, he said, you've just sat through 3 lots of green lights. I think my response was pretty good. I said, well, at least I'm not running the reds, am I? And he couldn't see. He couldn't see in the darkness what my distraction was, and my distraction couldn't see there was a traffic cop here, so I was sort of, you know, between the two, sort of negotiating. Anyway, you pretty won't better use that, but anyway, I just mentioned that.
Crime has also been a great inspiration for our writers, and one of our greatest is sadly oft forgotten.
Ronald Hugh Morrison. He gave us The Scarecrow, Came a Hot Friday, Pallet on the Floor and more. He died on Boxing Day in 1972 at the age of 50. His books and this photo just about all that's left of him. That and his house.
There's no doubt that Morrison is sitting comfortably, at least somewhere in the middle of the peloton of New Zealand's peddlers of fiction. Fittingly, his home here in Hawera has been preserved as a monument to his contribution to our literary landscape. Actually, the house was unceremoniously bowled in the 80s to make way for this bloody big KFC.
Order when you're ready, please.
And a small potato and gravy.
town has always been divided simply because some of us say Ronald Hugh Morrison made a big contribution, we must recognise him from that point of view, and the other half say Ronald Hugh Morrison was a person of shady character, and why should we recognise somebody like that?
To find out just how shady he was, one need only visit the drinking establishments of Hawera and talk to the grumpy old men who remember Morrison's usual.
A couple of flagons of beer, followed by a couple of bottles of sherry. And that's just one of the stories.
I'm not going to say what he was because he was an inebriate, let's put it that way. But he was a beautiful musician. He could play a wonderful game of snooker.
He was in trouble with the police a bit at different times.
He got a bit rough at times, did he?
Oh, he did. You've got no idea. He womanised, he did everything right from the A to the Z.
The link between art and crime has been well documented. George Wilder was a humble burglar who became a household name in 1962 after breaking out of jail and living on the lam for some 65 days.
The end of the decade found him seeking another kind of freedom.
I feel I have nothing of importance to say because I'm only just beginning to learn how to paint. I consider myself an amateur, and I'm still learning, and I doubt very much if I could ever develop enough ability to earn a living at painting.
Then there's Ronald Jorgensen, the infamous Bassett Road machine gun murderer / painter, who disappeared mysteriously in the 1980s.
Though his car was found at the bottom of a cliff in Kaikoura, his body wasn't. Police remain convinced he staged his own death.
But just as it has taken away from society, crime has also, on occasion, given back.
Tonight, a cautionary tale for young hitchhikers.
Crime Watch took New Zealand crimes and turned them into sparkling light entertainment.
You leave him alone.
For all the family.
I mentioned earlier that 2 Christchurch men have been enticing children into their cars, and the warning's worth repeating for everyone. On Monday, January the 10th, a 14-year-old Auckland girl learned the lesson the hard way.
The show was famous for its helpful reconstructions of Kiwi crime.
It was about 1 p.m. when I turned down Shirley Road. I was feeling completely wrecked.
Hey, excuse me. Can you tell me how I'd get to Old Papatoetoe?
Oh, you just down the main road.
Down here? Right, thanks. You from around here?
Oh, no.
But the crimes on Crime Watch were oft overshadowed by the program's own criminal use of creative license, especially with regard to skin colour.
How many guests? Just me, one night. Okay. If you'd like to fill that in, sir. And how will you be paying? Cash.
He gave me a mixture of beer and wine. I would have had 3 or 4 drinks, which is pretty stupid, because I hadn't had that much in my life.
Perhaps you better lie down here. Hope you feel better. There you go.
In more ways than one, it was the worst possible advertisement for ethnic minorities. The over-representation of ethnic minorities in crime statistics has long been a talking point in New Zealand, and even surfaced in the 1970s sitcom Dr. Rangi.
So you're accusing me of stealing these pigs? Why? Because I'm Māori?
Now, calm down, Rangi. I'm no racist. I propped with a Tūhoi boy in the first 15, and some of my best roots have been Maoris. But the fact of the matter is, you are a Maori.
Yes?
Well, statistically speaking, that makes you twice as likely to be guilty of this crime.
Well, Constable, you're Pākehā.
Yes?
Well, makes you twice as likely to steal my land.
Boss, we got him. Guy turned himself in down the station.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Rangi,
That's okay, Roy.
Was he a Maori?
You know, I never would have stolen those pigs like that. I would have taken his daughters too.
Oh, Dr. Rangy.
Back in the 1970s, the cops considered themselves to be firm but fair, or to use the terminology of today, bloody brutal.
Tell me about the hiding. How did he do that?
Well, first of all, he smacked me in the face, and he grabbed me by the shoulder, and he hit me in the jaw, and then when I went down on the ground, he kicked me, and then he gave me and my mate half an hour to get out of Avondale.
Vouch that in my 14 years of service, I've never yet been in a position where I've seen anybody ever given a hiding. I doubt some of them do, in fact, warrant such handling, but I've never seen any such justice dealt out.
It's a safe country. You can walk without being molested. And our police, like the British force, are not armed. They're there to assist.
But in the case of team police, the assistance was oft unwelcomed. Team police roamed like packs of drooling dogs, picking on Polynesians.
What is the name of your passport then?
And pestering pissheads, travelling their beat by Bedford van.
This is normal routine work for team police, pub visits. Although their primary role is to respond to violent group situations, riot control is only a small part of the job. In a typical evening, team police see a lot more pubs than punch-ups. The team police units were set up to respond quickly and firmly to violent situations. But it's claimed the police themselves, in many cases, are provoking the violence.
Get off me! Get off! I will throw my ass! I was there when you throw that chicken for me.
It was a brutal reign of terror that only came to an end after embarrassing footage of team police training techniques made them a national laughingstock.
Move!
But like fashion crimes, our perspective on right and wrong is clearly governed by the passing of time, a notion not lost on our pioneering animators. In the 1980s, the most virulent and destructive crime in New Zealand was not bestiality or even murder. It was the theft of milk money. For a nation reared on the goodness of dairy, milk money misdemeanours were a threat to our very existence. But in 1980, a group of Taranaki milkmen hit back, and they did it using music.
They say music hath charms, and in the case of the Hawera milk vendors, they also hope it will have persuasive powers too.
Hawera's milk trucks were given voice using special horns to summon milk lovers. No longer would 20-cent pieces end up in Spacey's machines.
So we're getting back to methods which suit the householder, like Mrs. Wilson, who sees it as a change for the better.
I think it's a good idea. You know exactly, when it's coming.
One thing, of course, is that it does away with petty thieving.
We found a chap locally here that could manufacture these. They're an electronic type of horn. And we fitted them in, and that's it.
Sadly, the siren song had unforeseen psychological effects on the townsfolk. Despite reducing milk money theft, the hypnotic harmonics were later blamed for a spate of assaults, murders, and even suicides.
I got taught how to steal the milk money by my Maori mate, Sydney Savage. And this was at primary school. And he, you know, I idolised that guy. He was a cool banana, and he, you know, pinched milk money on the way, you know, in the afternoon, you know, around about that time. And you know, I say, "Oh, where do you get money from for the lolly?" He said, "Oh, no, I took it from the milk bottles." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I'll show you." So he showed me how to do it. Wow.
There was a lot more than milk money at stake for Maori during the Bastion Point protests that culminated in 1978. The 507-day occupation of their own land was destined to become a watershed.
500 policemen poured onto Bastion Point this morning and arrested 230 people who had refused to leave the camp.
Among the last to go were women who'd held out in the meeting house until they were physically removed.
At the time, many considered the protesters to be nothing more than criminals. Now, they're seen as heroes. Looking back on Bastion Point, it's clear that one man's crime is another man's justice, and that time is the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner. In this, our Aotearoa, land of crime.